invite them all. Okay, well, I gather myself together here. Sorry, something just went down the wrong way. Excuse me. Welcome, everyone. We did have a closed session earlier today, so we have cut out some formalities. Thank you. Councillor, are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest on the planning agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll go to Councillor Johnston for our land acknowledgement statement, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to begin today's meeting by acknowledging the First Peoples, who for thousands of years before us were and are still the keepers and caretakers of this land where we now live and work. And in particular, the Chippewas of Rama, Wata, Mohawk First Nations, and the Moon River Métis. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people. We recognize all the generations of Indigenous people and their historic connection to this place, and we are grateful for the opportunity to gather here at this time. Miigwech.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. Before I get started on the script here, I know that there are a number of people here that are for an application that is not a public hearing today, so we will be dealing with the public hearings before the deputations start. So if you're following along on the agenda, I just wanted to let you know where that happens. So this afternoon, there are 4 public meetings scheduled for 4 zoning bylaw amendments. Application number ZA04-2025 for Green and Johns. Application number ZA05-2025 for Williamson. Application number ZA06-2025 for Sparrow Lake Estates Limited. Application number ZA09-2025 for Estate of Anna Boyington. The Planning Act requires that a public meeting be held before council decides to pass a zoning bylaw amendment. The public meeting serves 2 purposes. First, to present to council and the public and the details and the background to the proposal. And second, to receive comments from the public and agencies before a council decision is made. I will briefly summarize the procedure to be utilized for the public meeting. The Manager of Planning Services, Adam Agar, will advise council as to when, how, and to whom notice of public meeting was circulated. Staff will then advise of the purpose and effect of the proposed zoning amendment and provide any additional information that is relevant to the application. Staff will further summarize any correspondence on file. From there, the applicant will be requested to make a presentation, followed by questions or presentations from the public, either in favor or against the proposal. Council will then have the opportunity to question the applicant, staff, or anyone giving presentations. The proposed zoning bylaw amendments will be then considered by council later this afternoon. If anyone from the public in the council chambers would like to request notification of the decision of any application, please complete the form provided on the table at the back. I will now ask the Manager of Planning Services to advise how, when, and to whom notice of the public meeting were circulated.
Thank you, Your Worship. Notice of the public meetings concerning the proposed zoning bylaw amendments were sent by first-class mail to the respective owners and assessed persons within 120 meters, that's 400 feet, of the property subject to the proposed bylaw and emailed to applicable agencies. Included within the notices was an explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposal, a site plan, and a key map showing the location of the property in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13.
It is important to note that should council pass any bylaws this afternoon, there is a 20-day appeal period, during which time the applicant, the municipality, and certain public bodies, as defined by the Planning Act, may appeal the decision of council. During this appeal period, no building permit may be issued or other work commenced. Also, in the event there is an appeal and in order to be kept advised of a possible Ontario Land Tribunal hearing, members of the public must request and be sent a copy of council's decision on the application. I'd also, before we get started on to public meeting number 1, like to mention that Councillor Strength is joining us from afar. So she is here virtually, so she can see us, and if she chooses to speak, we will see her. So with that, I now declare this portion of the meeting to be a public meeting to deal with application number ZA04-2025, Green and Johns, I will now ask the manager of planning services to please summarize the purpose and effect of the proposed bylaw and provide any additional information and correspondence relevant to the application. Mr. Agar?
Thank you, Your Worship. The subject property is located on Shady Lane and has frontage on Lake Muskoka. The property is designated waterfront area in the official plan and is zoned residential waterfront RW6. The property is developed with detached dwelling and an attached open deck, a boardwalk beside the deck, and a one-slip, two-story boathouse with a flat roof and attached dock, and an upper-story deck with a detached garage. The rear of the property is well vegetated, sloping upwards gently from the road to the existing dwelling. The shoreline of the property contains a mix of mature vegetation and bedrock outside of the existing building envelopes. It should also be noted the boathouse and docking footprint are in front of the most significant outcropping, and there are a mix of small trees there, and further that the front of the existing boathouse on the property has been damaged. The application was submitted in order to permit the reconstruction and expansion of an existing non-conforming two-story boathouse with an upper-story sleeping cabin. The application also seeks to recognize the following development standards that are related to the proposed expansion. Specifically, permit a maximum second-floor area of 35.3 square meters for a two-story boathouse where 24 square meters exists. Permit a maximum height of 5.9 meters for a two-story boathouse where 4.9 meters exist. Permit the existing minimum setback of 0.7 meters for a dock from the projected eastern side lot line. Permit the existing minimum setback of 4.6 meters for a boathouse from the projected eastern side lot line. Permit a minimum setback of 4.5 meters for the second story of a boathouse from the projected side lot line where 4.2 meters currently exists. Permit a maximum shoreline development area of 182.3 square meters where 183.7 square meters currently exists. And lastly, to permit the existing maximum shoreline development width of 14 meters. So what you're seeing on screen here on the, I believe it's the right-hand side, or the left-hand side is what's existing, and the right-hand side is what is proposed. So most notably, you'll see in this configuration, what's presently there, you'll see a gap in this corner of the dock, where it is then now proposed to be filled in or rounded out, maintaining the same setback. And then the boathouse itself is going to be expanding within the same footprint and area to the east, and it's to then actually accommodate for a boat to actually be contained within that structure. In addition to what's been requested as detailed in the staff report, staff are recommending the following provisions are also included in the implementing zoning bylaw to limit the intensity and visual impact of the boathouse based on what's been proposed. Specifically, to permit a maximum width of a two-story boathouse of 5.2 meters, to permit a maximum width for a second-story deck on a two-story boathouse of 6.5 meters, and to prohibit plumbing fixtures within a two-story boathouse. And so, based on the relief that was being requested originally by the applicants, those additional points of relief are just to ensure that what's being developed is what's actually shown on screen here. So those additional setbacks that are being sought is to ensure that only the dock can be that wide, only the boathouse can be that wide, and only the upper deck can be that wide. As detailed in the staff report, section 5.7.2 contains regulations for non-complying buildings and structures. And I think what's important here today for council's information as well as those in the public is there's two factors here. We have non-complying provisions and non-conforming provisions. So the non-complying existing provisions has to do with existing setbacks or shoreline development. So what we've heard earlier was really we're recognizing what's already there, and they're legalizing it through the zoning bylaw amendment through the process of this redevelopment. And actually what we're seeing through this proposal is a decrease in overall shoreline development. Currently there's 183.7 square meters and they're going down to 182 square meters. In addition to that, we have non-conforming provisions too, and that's specifically that this is a two-story boathouse where typically only a one-story boathouse would be permitted. However, this already exists as a two-story boathouse and it already contains a sleeping cabin within it. So as detailed in the staff report, one of the provisions when it comes to non-conforming uses is that the intensity does not increase or improve, and that's why the provision about plumbing fixtures not being permitted in the second story, because currently there are none, and it's the opinion of staff that including those would be increasing the intensity of the sleeping cabin, whereas right now the only reason the upper floor is really expanding is because the lower floor has to expand to accommodate a boat. In addition to that, the height is increasing because right now the structure is a flat roof. You'll see in the site photos, and they're now moving to a peak gable roof. So that's the difference really there. Actually, I'll go through agency comments first. The deputy chief building official had no objections and did indicate that the location of the projected side lot line would need to be confirmed on site through the building permit review process. The manager of revenue had no objections. The infrastructure technologist, no objections. The deputy fire chief, no objections, subject to the Ontario Fire Code and Ontario Building Code requirements. The District of Muskoka had no objections, provided that town staff are satisfied with the proposed shoreline development area and shoreline development width, and that the remaining shoreline buffer will be maintained as appropriate. The Muskoka Lakes Association did provide comment, of which was circulated to council and the applicant. Comments were provided that the application should be judged based on the requirements of the current zoning bylaw and not based on what currently exists. Concerns were provided that the proposed expansion does not provide a demonstrable net benefit due to the increased floor area on the second-story sleeping cabin and the maximum height, and that the following modifications are requested if council decides to approve the application. Specifically, retain the maximum floor area for the second floor sleeping cabin at 24 square meters, reduce the width of the dock on the southeast side of the boathouse such that the dock runs parallel to the boathouse but does not turn 90 degrees at the shore, reduce the second story deck on the same southeast side of the boathouse to mirror the edge of the dock, and then a request was also made for the entire public process to be completed, including the public meeting prior to issuing a report with recommendations. So in response to those comments, as noted in the staff report, staff would note that the town of Gravenhurst does not explicitly require an expansion to a non-conforming use to provide a demonstrable net benefit, but it does contain criteria to evaluate the intensity of the expansion and the impact to surrounding uses to mitigate nuisances where possible. In this regard, the expansion to the second floor area that is used as a sleeping cabin would increase the amount of habitable space within the structure, but this has been requested to support the structural design of the new boathouse and the first floor expansion, which is intended to provide additional space for boat storage and access. The same number of slips in the first story and number of bedrooms in the sleeping cabin are intended to remain the same, and that the expansion is concentrated away from the existing deficient eastern side yard, where the nuisance impact would be more likely to occur. It's also worth noting that the docking footprint on the eastern side of the boathouse is existing and does not propose to change, and that the second story deck will remain on the northern and western sides of the boathouse while moving slightly further away from the existing deficient side line setback. The drafted implementing zoning bylaw also contained those additional pieces of zoning relief that I had talked about earlier, where the real intention was to ensure that when this is put into practice and the building permits applied for, this is the design that would be done. It then wouldn't allow for a second story open deck to be extended beyond what you see here. It also wouldn't allow for the boathouse to be any wider than what's shown here as well. Moving on to site photos, this is looking north into the property from Shady Lane. This is then looking northwest in the view of the existing dwelling and the attached deck. This is then moving down towards the existing boathouse. You can see some sparse vegetation there. As noted, this is more the rocky part of the property, but there are some existing tree cover there, and you'll see the flat roofed boathouse. This is another vantage point. Again, you see the existing second story deck, and then that upper story is the existing sleeping cabin. This is then looking west along the shoreline to structures on neighboring properties, which are well separated from the existing boathouse and the proposed footprint, which is in the exact same location. This is then looking down to the shoreline. This is then the existing separation between the boathouse and the neighboring dock. This is then the vantage point looking, so just to reference you, this is the boathouse in question in the subject property. So the two-story boathouse already existing there with this second-story sleeping cabin. As detailed in the staff report, it's staff's opinion the application is consistent with the provincial planning statement. It conforms to the official plan, is appropriate and represents good planning. As a result, staff are recommending the application be approved, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Ager. I will now ask for comments by the applicant's agent if they are attending in person. Okay, we just need your name and full mailing address, please.
Mayor and Council, my name is Melissa Markham Planning and Associates, 1025 Rebecca Lane, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H 2J6. I'm here today on behalf of the owner of the subject lands, Carolyn Johns and John Green of 1027 Shea Lane. The owners and I have read the staff report being presented today. We believe that the report's an accurate representation of the proposed development and the subject lands. I was retained by the owners to assist with this planning application for the redevelopment of an existing dock and boathouse. As your manager provided, this was damaged by causes out of the control of the owner. Through preliminary discussions with staff, the owners have proposed the development that you see before you today. The proposed amendments to the zoning bylaw are being requested to permit the reconstruction and expansion of an existing non-conforming two-story boathouse with an upper-story sleeping cabin. Relief is requested in this application to recognize the existing development and the location. The only change to the existing is to permit an increase in the second floor area for a two-story boathouse and increase the height. The proposed development is required in order to reconstruct a boathouse that was damaged in an accident, and it had the effect of shifting the boathouse off of the existing cribs. In October of 2023, the existing boathouse was hit by a pontoon boat, and both the boathouse and the cribs were damaged. Through the process of replacing the existing two-story boathouse, an engineer was engaged and determined that the boathouse needs to be rebuilt to a safe structure. In addition to making the structure safe, the proposed changes to the structure are proposed for the following reasons. The lower boathouse and docking. The existing boathouse has one 2.6 meter wide boat slip with 0.3 meters and 0.6 meters of decking for access on either side. The owners have been told this is an issue and could be addressed through the reconstruction to a 3 meter wide boat slip with 0.9 of a meter on both sides for access. This increase is to accommodate safe passage around the boat slip within the boathouse. With the proposed increase in decking, the design of the boathouse has increased the lower boat size for the reasons that I've mentioned. No change to the length of the boathouse is proposed. The reconfiguration of the lower dock is to address the reconfiguration of stairs and the addition of docking on the west side to account for the loss of docking to the east side because of the widening. With regards to the upper boathouse and height, the upper boathouse is proposed to increase in size to accommodate the change to the lower boathouse. The engineer that completed the boathouse drawings provided that having the upper boathouse supported by the lower boathouse walls on the cribs is recommended. Without this change, the upper boathouse would be more complicated to build, would require additional post and beam, and would be more expensive and have more potential for water entry into the lower boathouse by having different walls. The height is increasing to an improved peak roof from an almost flat roof, and the increase in peak will allow for proper shingles and drainage and will improve the aesthetics of the boathouse. As you saw in the photos, the surrounding area consists of residential uses developed with dwellings, accessory structures, and shoreline structures, which is in keeping with the subject lands. My full planning opinion's been provided within the application, but I'll provide a brief overview. The PPS provides that rural areas are to be supported by building upon rural character and leveraging rural amenities and assets. The proposed reconstruction is the replacement of a dock and two-story boathouse with a sleeping cabin. The overall width of the structure is not increasing, and the amount of development within the shoreline development area will be maintained. The reconstruction of this structure is to accommodate it to be constructed in a safe manner, and it will maintain the character of the area. The district official plan policies for development in the waterfront area, there were no comments from the District of Muskoka with regards to the application. The application proposes to reconstruct an existing two-story boathouse. No change in use is proposed. The development will maintain the existing setbacks and overall shoreline development width. The application further proposes to remove an existing boardwalk and a portion of a platform and stairs that have been constructed on land. This will consolidate the shoreline development to an existing deck, dock, and boathouse and remove additional developed areas on land. The proposed reconstruction will be in character and compatible with existing development. The reconstruction will have a physical character similar to the existing. Setbacks will be maintained, and height will have a minimal increase over the existing. The application also considered the town official plan by protecting the visual qualities of the lake and locating the redevelopment in the same footprint, having the same side yard setbacks as the existing structure. The redevelopment will also maintain the existing shoreline development area and width, and it will not increase the intensity of use, as you heard here today. No environmental impacts are anticipated through the development. The proposed redevelopment is in keeping with engineering and building recommendations for usability and replacement cost, not for an increase in use. The town official plan includes policy regarding legal nonconforming uses, and the reconstruction will have no adverse effect on the present use of the surrounding lands or natural features. The dock and two-story boathouse, once again, were damaged by causes beyond the control of the owner. The owners are seeking to reconstruct the dock and two-story boathouse containing a sleeping cabin. Through the design process, it was noted there are building requirements that must be complied with, and changes to the existing boathouse will be more in keeping with current development standards, such as minimum dock width around a boat slip and a boathouse. As the owners are proposing minor changes to the shoreline structure, relief from the zoning bylaw was required for an increase in building height, size, and volume. The zoning provisions that were included in the site-specific exception are to recognize a dock and two-story boathouse that currently have a sleeping cabin above. It also includes existing setbacks and a reduction in the shoreline development area. The changes proposed are solely related to an increase in size of the sleeping cabin and the maximum height to a peak roof. Once again, the increase in the second floor. The size of the sleeping cabin is proposed to accommodate changes to the lower boathouse. It's proposed to increase from 24 square meters to 35.3 square meters. However, this is still less than the maximum permitted size of a sleeping cabin at 46.5 square meters. The increase in second floor is due to an engineering and construction rationale that proposes to keep the walls of the first and second floor in line. This will provide for a more structurally stable building with fewer areas for water leakage. No change to the 2 bedrooms is proposed. Two-story boathouses on Lake Muskoka, where permitted, can have a maximum floor area of 35.3 square meters and contain a sleeping cabin. The proposed second floor area is less than this, and it's also smaller than the size permitted for a sleeping cabin. In terms of the increase in height, the height is taken to the peak of the roof, and this has been a 3-foot change to the peak. Any change from a flat roof would require relief to construct a peaked roof. It's our opinion that that roof will provide for improved aesthetics and would have less of a visual impact than a flat roof with the same height. Due to the grade of the property, the increase in height will be below the grade of the land where the dwelling is located. The increase is due to allow for proper shingles and drainage, and it's an existing 2-story boathouse. Where 2-story boathouses are permitted on Lake Muskoka, they can have a maximum height of 6 meters, and the proposed height is in keeping with the 2-story maximum on this lake. The application is consistent with the PPS, conforms with both the district and town official plans. It's appropriate and represents good planning. We are also aware of comments that were received on this application, and to provide a response, I offer the following. The expansion repair of the existing structure is not contrary to the official plan or zoning bylaw, both of which provide policies for where an expansion and repair are proposed, which this application conforms with. The application seeks to recognize the existing development on the subject lands, with the exception of the increase in floor and height. I believe I provided a rationale for these changes. However, the comments further provided that the maximum shoreline development area is increasing, which is incorrect. And some of the numbers that are provided in the Muskoka Lakes Association letter are not the numbers that we're looking for through the application. The application continues the width and length of the development, maintains the current setbacks, and no visual impact will occur with the increase in second floor area. I'm available to answer any questions, and I believe that the owners were online to speak if they needed to. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your presentation. We understand that's what the scuttlebutt up here is that they're having difficulty logging on. So we believe that they're not able to log on with us today. So I guess we could ask you any questions. I mean, you did a pretty thorough job, but
I don't think they were intending to speak,
Okay.
only if they needed to, but they
Okay.
did request the link just in case.
okay, so that's where they are. They're out there somewhere. So thank you for that. And then, sorry, Madam Clerk, are they online? Oh, okay, so we do have, next, as for our procedural bylaw, we do have Patrick Yost, who is pre-registered to participate electronically, so bear with us, we've got, we're good. Oh, there he is, perfect, okay. We're still working the kinks out of this new system. It's pretty impressive, but not perfect, so go ahead.
No problem. Can you hear me okay?
Try it
Are
again.
you able to hear me? I just want to say, are you able to hear me? I just want to confirm that.
You're a little crackly.
How about if I turn up the volume? Is that better?
No, I'm afraid it's not.
Okay.
Try it again.
I'll try and speak loudly into the microphone. Let me know if you
It's
can hear.
not that, it's in and out. It's not that we can't hear you. It's loud enough. It's just crackly. It's in and out. So I don't know, sometimes if you use a headset, it makes it a little easier, but you're all broken up.
Yeah, I don't have it. I can try and do this. Does this work better for you if I use these?
No, it's
it doesn't work better.
not working. Did you want to try and turn your screen on and just use the audio? Sometimes it's too much bandwidth for your service. Oh, we have to. We'll give it a try.
I'll try to speak if you can hear me a little bit. Not at all. I went through all the tests online and everything prior to, so I'm not sure what the situation is. Sorry.
So I'm gonna ask if you wanted to exit and try coming back in, and maybe that, so the equivalent of turning it off and on again. And then we'll see if that works, and if not, we'll have to move on, I'm afraid. Okay, Mr. Yost, give it a try.
I'll try again. Is this any better?
No,
Any better?
I'm afraid, it's just like I said, crackly. I don't think we'll be able to understand your point. Did you submit some comments in writing?
I did not, but I can. In general, we were going to say thank you to John for working with us in advance of the meeting to go through the plans. From that perspective, I think we generally agreed with some of the stipulations from the local planning department, specifically the lack of plumbing within the property. From that perspective, to avoid increased usage, so we're pleased to see that. We're very familiar with the property, having originally rented that when we started coming up to Muskoka about 45 years ago. So we actually rented that property when we initially were coming to Muskoka. We've been up there for about close to 45 years now. I think the only watch out from a use perspective, and we mentioned this to the applicants, to Carolyn and John.
Mr. Yost, I'm
Yep.
gonna actually ask you, we can't, it's not really understandable from this point. We did get a thank you in there, though, to the applicants, that you were pleased that they were able to work ahead of time, and so we do appreciate that, and we understand that you were pleased that there will be no plumbing in the sleeping cabin. So I'll take those remarks and put them, reiterate them for the public. But unfortunately, it's just too difficult to hear. So, but thank you, we do appreciate you taking the time today, so.
Okay, I'll submit the written watchouts that I had. I'll submit those in writing if it's
Oh.
not too late.
Okay, that'd be great. Okay, so thanks very much. Okay, so. Now, is there any members of the public that would like to speak to this application? That are here in person? No? Okay, thank you. Council? Are there any questions or comments to manager of planning or the applicant? And let's keep in mind, these are questions. So I'll go to Councillor Morphy, starting a list here.
Thank you. Through your worship, on page 6, this is what I'm getting confused about, this plumbing issue. It says it will not increase the existing number of boat slips, bedrooms, or plumbing fixtures. So that says to me there's plumbing already there. And then going down to page 10, as we all know, it says you can't have plumbing. So where do we land on the plumbing? Is there plumbing or not?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Morphy. Our understanding is there's not, and the bylaw is specifically written to prohibit it within the two-story boathouse. So an increase to plumbing fixtures would be going from 0 to 1. So they're not proposing any. So there is none, and the bylaw then prohibits it from having it within the two-story boathouse.
Okay, Councillor Hunter?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you. My question was actually about, I was a little surprised that we didn't see any comments from any of the neighbors. And I apologize that I couldn't really hear what that neighbor was, whether it was a complaint or I wasn't sure. So I guess my question is maybe just to the planner is that, or maybe to Mr. Egger, making sure that those neighbors did receive the information and that were there discussions with neighbors about the increase in height and size.
Who's want to take this, Mr. Egger?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll start, and then I'll pass it over to the applicant's
Okay.
agent. Just to the second part of your question, Councillor Hunter, yes, the applications were circulated in accordance with the Planning Act, so everyone within 120 meters did receive the notice to where their address is registered. So all those property owners did get included in that notice, and then perhaps Ms. Markham can speak to the conversations that may or may not have had with that neighbor specifically.
Okay. Thank you, through your mayor. Yes, the owners of the property, if they were able to attend today, they did speak with neighbors on both sides of the property, and that one was 1025 that was just on the call. They spoke with both of them. They had received the notice. They answered questions. There was questions with regards to the increase in the second floor of the boathouse, also increase of the decking or the docking area towards 1025 Shady Lane that was speaking, and they tried to address and show all the copies of the plans ahead of time. We didn't know until today that one was going to be in attendance, but yes, they did have Zoom calls with both of them and provided them with their plans in advance of today's meeting.
Okay, before I go to Councillor Jorgensen, this is a message to the neighbor that's out there. If you had a couple questions and you wanted to email them to adam.egger@gravenhurst.ca, we can see that those answers, that we get answers to your questions by the time we get to the bylaw stage. So maybe you'll get this message. Are you shaking? Oh, he's shaking his head. Okay, and a thumbs up. So perfect. Okay, sorry to interrupt the programming. Councillor Jorgensen?
Thank you, Your Worship. It's just a question I have about the access to this second story. Is it only through the stairs that we see on the dock, or is there an upper level access as well? I'm just not clear on that from the drawings and whatnot.
Yep, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor. There is access from the from grade, as mentioned, and there were a couple of photos submitted with the planning justification report to demonstrate there is a significant rock face in front of the property. So this two-story boathouse will essentially be at grade or below from the top of the building. So yes, there will be stairs at that location to access down to the dock and boathouse.
Okay, before I go back over to Councillor Morphy, does anybody else have any additional questions? Okay, Councillor Morphy?
Thank you, through you. I just want to get my head perfectly around this application. A 100-foot lot, you're pretty blessed to have a boathouse with living quarters above it, as it is. Now, would we not be here at all if they just fixed it the way it is? Like, if they just rebuilt it exactly as it stands now, would they require any permissions, or could they just do that?
Through your worship to Councillor Morphy, that's correct. With 31 meters of frontage, the applicant is entitled to rebuild a 2-story boathouse with a sleeping cabin in the same footprint as shown.
Okay, thank you. So, council? No more questions on the application? So we'll talk about this maybe again at bylaw stage, but until then, Mr. Egger, are there any recommendations or comments to bring to the attention of council as a result of these proceedings?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, at this time, staff would recommend that the application be approved, notwithstanding the fact we might be receiving comments from the neighbors, which might bring something new to light for us to consider at the bylaw stage. And that's kind of the point of going through this public hearing process where we take into those comments. But as it stands right now, given the proceedings that have happened so far, staff would continue to recommend that the application be approved with the inclusion of those additional provisions in the zoning bylaw detailed in the staff report.
Okay, thank you. The bylaw will be considered by council later this afternoon, or if there are no further questions, and I declare this public meeting to be concluded. I now declare this portion of the meeting to be a public meeting to deal with application number ZA05-2025 for Williamson. I will now ask the Manager of Planning Services to please summarize the purpose and effect of the proposed bylaw and provide any additional information and correspondence relevant to the application.
Subject property is located on Kilworthy Road. The southwest third, I'll call it, of the subject property is designated waterfront area in the official plan, and the remainder is in the rural area. Just for council's benefit, the waterfront area extends 150 meters inland from water bodies larger than 8 hectares. So in this case, that's only why a portion's in the waterfront area and the balance of the lands is in the rural designation. And currently, right now, the subject property is zoned residential waterfront RW6, and that's likely due to the fact of the designation that it partially contains. The subject property is developed with a dwelling and accessory structures, including a large new storage building, which is not shown on this air photo, as well as a small garage, multiple sheds, a gazebo, and a temporary storage building. The application was submitted in order to rezone the property to residential rural RR5, which permits a lot coverage of 10%, and to permit a standalone second dwelling on the property, in addition to a reduced front yard setback of 13.3 meters. So on screen here, this is the proposed standalone second dwelling with a 13.3 meter setback from Kilworthy Road. The existing house is here, and the new garage, which wasn't shown in that air photo, is right here. The majority of the existing structures in the proposed new dwelling will all be located in a portion of the property that's within the rural area designation in the official plan. Similar to the subject property, other properties within the vicinity that are located on the north side of Kilworthy Road in designated rural area are also zoned residential backlot. And the RB7 zoning is appropriate for lots within the waterfront area of the designation of the official plan and not the rural area. That's therefore staff's opinion is that by rezoning this property to rural residential RR5, that would bring the subject lands into conformity with the official plan. With that being said, within the rural residential zone, an additional residential unit is permitted either within an existing dwelling or within an accessory structure, such as a garage. However, in this case, the proposal is for a standalone dwelling unit. In order to address the official plan and zoning bylaw, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application is required, and that it stipulates that only one additional dwelling unit is permitted, meaning that there won't be a third permitted in either the garage or the dwelling. So the zoning bylaw that's been prepared stipulates that should this be a standalone structure as applied for, the applicant then can't come back and ask for another unit within the garage or another one in the dwelling. In addition to that, as detailed in the staff report, planning staff would note as it relates to the requested relief for the front yard setback at 13.3 meters. There are no physical constraints on the property that prevent the proposed new dwelling unit being moved further back than 13.3 meters from the property line. When asked for some justification and rationale, the applicant has advised that the reason for the requested reduced setback is to be able to back up their boat into a storage building on the other side of the driveway. However, as there appears ample area for a new dwelling envelope that meets the minimum requirements of the RR5 zone, staff are of the opinion that the requested front lot line setback is not appropriate and have not recommended that it be included in the proposed amending zoning bylaw. Actually, I'll talk about agency comments first. The chief building official provided the comment that the septic system is to be sized and located to meet the Ontario Building Code, and that the setbacks from overhead hydro lines must meet the Ontario Building Code as well. And you'll see here on the applicant's plan, they've noted a hydro line there, which services the existing dwelling, and right now they're recommending or proposing a 5-meter setback, which is in line with those Ontario Building Code requirements. In addition to that, the infrastructure technologist and the deputy treasurer had no objection to the proposal. The fire and emergency services provided the comment of no objection, subject to Ontario Fire Code and Building Code, and the District of Muskoka no objection, and did note that the subject property may contain species at risk in their habitat, and the applicant's responsible to ensure that all federal and provincial requirements are addressed. So then moving into site photos, and this is looking west down Kilworthy Road towards Franklin Park. The applicant's driveway is on the right-hand side. This is then looking from the same location into the subject property. So that new building that was constructed after the air photos is over here to the right-hand side. And then you'll see the dwelling is set back a considerable distance. You'll also see here that the property, again, from a topographical standpoint, is relatively flat, albeit it is snow-covered. This is then standing, looking at the dwelling from in front of that new shop. And then this is looking behind the shop. Some topographical rock outcroppings and constraints were noted in that location. However, that's not where the proposed dwelling is proposed to be sited. Then this is looking behind the driveway, looking back at the dwelling, and you'll also see other accessory structures. And then this is the temporary shelter as well. Then turning back and looking at the new garage. And then this is the location of the proposed new additional dwelling unit and Kilworthy Road. And one more vantage point of the flat area. So it's staff's opinion that with the recommended amending zoning bylaw provisions, the application is consistent with the provincial planning statement, conforms to the official plan as appropriate, and represents good planning. As a result, staff are recommending the application be approved. I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Does the applicant or their agent have a presentation they wish to make?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. If I didn't have the pontoon boat, I would be able to back into the garage pretty easy. It's a 22-foot pontoon boat, so I actually do it in the summertime, pull out onto the grass and then back into the building. And if I have to go to the 18-foot setback, that's going to put it right in the middle of the garage.
Is that all you wanted to share with us today? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this application? Council, are there any questions? The applicant or for manager planning? I have one. Madam Clerk, could we please have the map put up back on, or the site plan? So this is drawn with their proposal. Where would the building be without, with meeting the setback that staff would like to see, which is actually in the bylaw? Could you just demonstrate where that would be?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. So again, this is the proposed structure, and right now the applicant's indicated that's 13.3 meters from the Kilworthy Road. The zoning bylaw requires 18-meter front yard setback, so that would involve putting this structure 5 meters back towards the house, which from the proposed dwelling right now, according to the applicant's plan, is an additional 46.8 meters away. So moving the building back 5 meters to be compliant with the zoning bylaw would still have a 41-meter separation between the new dwelling and the existing dwelling. Now, again, this plan isn't to scale, but if we take these measurements as accurate, whether or not the dwelling can be wholly located within that 46.8 meters and not obstruct the proposed garage and backing up remains to be seen. But 46.8 meters appears to be ample room for this building to be moved back 5 meters to comply with the minimum front yard requirements, especially based on the site visit and the site photos we saw. There were no other topographical constraints imposing any other hardship of moving the building. And further to that, unfortunately, there's no real planning policy or planning basis aside from the backing up of the boat that we can rely on in providing our recommendation for reducing that setback.
Councillor Morphy, you had a question?
Through you, Madam Mayor, and I should have asked this ahead of time. I really should have. But there's no legend. Are all the dotted lines hydro lines or just the one on the right?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Morphy. Just the one on the right. The dotted line on the left-hand side appears to be, sorry, I'm just trying to get this to catch up, marking the setback between the well and the road and then the well and the garage is what that dashed line is for. But this one here is the hydro line, which goes like this to this pole and then cuts into the dwelling to service it.
Okay, Mr. Egger, I just have one other question then. If, with this being 13.3, like their proposal, would you be able to recommend approval? Or you're only approving, you only feel that you can support it because it's at 18, if it goes to the 18 meters?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, as noted in the staff report, staff are recommending that the application be approved only if the 18 meters is maintained. So the amending zoning bylaw has been prepared that the relief's been granted to rezone the property to RR5 and then also allow for an additional standalone dwelling unit to be built. So that zoning relief, planning staff have the policy basis to support it. It's just at the 13.3 meter setback when it appears like there's other room from the road for it to be located. So the bylaw has been prepared as such. That doesn't include the 13.3 meters of relief, but it does include the rezoning of the lands and allowing for the additional residential unit to be located on the property.
Thank you. Okay. So, council, if there's no other questions, Mr. Egger, are there recommendations or comments to bring to the attention of council as a result of these proceedings?
Staff would recommend that the application be approved with the provisions included in the amending zoning bylaw.
The bylaw will be considered by council later this afternoon. If there are no further questions, then I declare this public meeting to be concluded. I now declare this portion of the meeting to be a public meeting to deal with application number ZA06-2025 for Sparrow Lake Estates Limited. I will now ask the Manager of Planning Services to please summarize the purpose and effect of the proposed bylaw and provide any additional information and correspondence relevant to the application. Mr. Egger?
Thank you, Your Worship. The portion of the property subject to this application is accessed via Clipsham Road. The subject lands are also designated waterfront area and rural area, given the size of the lot. So again, lands within 150 meters of the water are within the waterfront designation, and lands beyond that are within the rural area designation. And as of right now, all the lands that are outlined in red on this key map are currently zoned commercial waterfront CW8 and subject to two special provisions, and that's special provision 98 and special provision 307. The area of the proposed lands to be rezoned is actually a rectangular piece of property that is in this corner right here. Currently, that area is vacant, relatively flat, and well vegetated. There's also a 30-meter wide right-of-way that exists on these lands on the western portion, which is occupied by a private road, and it provides access to the waterfront residential lots immediately abutting the subject property. This application was submitted with a concurrent consent application, and that application was conditionally approved at this month's Committee of Adjustment meeting. And specifically, the portion of land we are dealing with here this afternoon is this red rectangle, which says the severed lands. And the application is to rezone only the red rectangle area, the severed lands, to an RW6 zone so that they can merge and be consistent with the lands that they are to be added to, the benefiting lands, which is part 2 on this map here. It might be hard to see, but that says part 2, benefiting lands. And there's also then a symbol here which indicates these lands are to be merged with those. So as a condition of consent, that the lands be rezoned to be brought into conformity with the lands that they're be merged was one of those conditions of approval. So that would see the lands then going from the CW8 with the 2 special provisions back to an RW6 to be consistent. With respect to agency comments, the chief building official, manager of revenue, and infrastructure technologist all had no objection. The deputy fire chief, no objection, subject to Ontario Fire Code and Building Code requirements. The Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, no comments. The Trent Severn Waterway, no objections. And the District of Muskoka, no objections. Just going to move through site photos. A lot of the site photos are going to focus on the existing right-of-way that traverses through the subject property. So this is then the entrance into the subject lands, only the red rectangle from Clipsham Road. This is then moving along that existing right-of-way towards the lands in which they're proposed to be merged with. This area here, the purpose also of this lot addition is to allow the benefiting lands to have some additional development area to specifically construct a detached garage. So the construction of the detached garage would comply with all zoning requirements and setbacks, and also not obstruct the existing right-of-way or impinge anyone else's access. And then this is a shot of the benefiting lands of which the properties to be merged with and to match the zoning. And functionally, it appears that the lands and the property are connected and utilized as one based on our site visit. So as detailed in the staff report, it's staff's opinion that the application is consistent with the provincial planning statement, conforms to the official plan, is appropriate, and represents good planning. As a result, staff are recommending that the application be approved, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you. Does the applicant or agent have a presentation to make? Welcome back.
So, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Melissa Markham, 1025 Rebecca Lane, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H 2J6. I'm here today on behalf of the owners of the subject lands, which are the subject of the zoning bylaw amendment application before you today. As staff provided, this application was submitted concurrently with an application for a lot addition. This application for consent was provisionally approved by the Committee of Adjustment on March 21st. The owners and I have read the staff report and proposed zoning bylaw and agree with the recommendations being made. I was retained by the owners of the benefiting lands to assist with planning applications related to the consent and closure of the Shore Road allowance, which is also underway. Through preliminary discussions with staff, the submitted planning justification report includes a discussion of the right-of-way and the downzoning of the subject lands, which is currently zoned commercial waterfront. The lands are proposed to be zoned residential waterfront zone in keeping with the benefiting lands to which these lands will be merged. My full planning opinion was included in the application submitted, but I'll provide a brief overview in keeping with my report. The purpose of the applications was to sever a parcel of land and provide this as a lot addition to the waterfront property that's abutting. The effect of the application is a lot addition and rezoning of the severed lands into the same zoning as the benefiting waterfront parcel. The lands contain a right-of-way. No change to the legal access is proposed through this application. The subject lands are designated waterfront and rural. However, they've been interpreted to be waterfront as they functionally relate to the waterfront property. As the lands are currently zoned commercial, they're proposed to be downzoned through this application. The district provides policy regarding downzoning of lands in order to enhance and maintain the tourism potential of Muskoka. In a review of the subject lands, it's been determined that the lands have not operated as a tourism commercial facility for at least 40 years, and the District of Muskoka Resort Inventory identifies these lands as potential resort and not as an existing operational resort. Further, only a small portion of the subject lands is proposed to be zoned waterfront residential, with the majority of the subject lands, other than the severed lands, being retained in the commercial zoning. The subject lands will retain approximately 28 hectares of commercial land, with only 5% of the total lands to be downzoned for residential use. No change to the water frontage of the subject lands is proposed through this application. The District of Muskoka official plan provides that downzoning may be considered when the impact of the loss has been analyzed and it would not negatively impact the critical mass of the tourism infrastructure and land base in Muskoka. A review of this policy was included in my planning report and concludes that the downzoning of 5% of the overall commercial property, which is not operating as a resort, would not negatively affect the critical mass of tourism in Muskoka. Further, the 28 hectares of commercially zoned lands will provide an opportunity to ensure development for commercial use could be realized on the remainder of the lands. As provided by staff, the subject lands are also within 120 meters of Sparrow Lake, which is identified as a provincially significant wetland, and any future development will be constructed at least 120 meters from this area. The application will maintain a significant portion of the land in a natural state, maintain the water quality, and protect the natural, visual, and aesthetic character of the lake. The rezoning of the lands to residential waterfront will increase the lot area for the benefiting lands and allow for the future development of a detached garage. The application is consistent with the PPS, conforms with the district and town official plans. The rezoning is appropriate and compatible with the surrounding area. No negative impact on the tourism infrastructure and land base in the district or town are anticipated, and the application represents good planning. I'm here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Markham. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak to this application? Okay, seeing none. Council, is there any questions for Manager of Planning or the applicant's planner? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Ager, as a result of these proceedings, are there any recommendations you'd like to make to council?
Your worship, through you, staff would recommend that the application be approved as detailed in the staff report.
Okay, thank you. The bylaw will be considered by council later this afternoon. If there are no further questions, then I declare this public meeting to be concluded. I now declare this portion of the meeting to be a public meeting to deal with application number ZA09-2025, Estate of Anna Boyington. I will now ask the Manager of Planning Services to please summarize the purpose and effect of the proposed bylaw and provide any additional information and correspondence relevant to the application. Mr. Ager?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, just by way of background, this application too is also before the Committee of Adjustment earlier this month and was conditionally approved. One of the conditions were that the lands be appropriately zoned, and as part then this zoning bylaw amendment application before you would fulfill one of those conditions. In saying that, the subject property to this application is accessed via Barkway Road. The subject lands are designated waterfront area in the Town of Gravenhurst official plan and are currently zoned rural. The subject lands are heavily treed and contain a dwelling and an outbuilding. They also contain an existing right-of-way, which allows access from Barkway Road through this property to the lands that front on the water. The application before you proposes to rezone both the lands that are noted here as the severed lands as well as the retained lands. the application specifically proposes to rezone the proposed retained lot to residential back lot, RB7, and to recognize the frontage of the proposed retained lot through this application. So right now, as mentioned, the lands are currently zoned rural. However, in the waterfront area designation, typically we see lands in the waterfront area designation that don't front on the water as being a residential backlot. So by rezoning these lands to residential backlot, that would be bringing them into conformity with the plan, and then also recognizing the frontage. In addition to that, it would also be rezoning the severed portion to residential waterfront, RW6F, the same as the benefiting lot, which is then noted in that light blue or purple, depending on what way you see that color. So here is the existing right-of-way and driveway, and through this application, in the settling of the estate, the applicants have worked with the neighboring landowner, the benefiting lot, to basically wholly contain the driveway, which provides access for them, then adding it to their land. In addition to that, it also serves as the access point for the lands to the immediate east, which is actually a family member as well, so a family member of the benefiting lands. With respect to agency comments, the chief building official and the manager of revenue had no objections. The infrastructure technologist had no objections as well. Deputy fire chief, no objections, standard of the Ontario Fire Code and Ontario Building Code requirements. The Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, no comments. And the District of Muskoka, no objections as well. And then I'll just go through site photos again. These site photos, similar to the last set of site photos, will be mostly taken from the existing driveway and right-of-way as we work from the Barkway Road to the benefiting lands. So this is the entrance and the driveway. Moving through, you'll see one of the outbuildings, which would then be contained within the severed lands that are then going to go to the benefiting. Moving through as we get closer towards the water. And then these are the benefiting lands of which that severed portion is going to be added to. As detailed in the staff report, it's staff's opinion that the application is consistent with the provincial planning statement, conforms to the official plan, is appropriate and represents good planning. As a result, staff are recommending the application be approved, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Egger. Does the applicant or agent have a presentation they would like to make? Yes. Great, come on up. Just need your name and address, please.
Hello, my name is Ian Shantz. My address is 12103 Quick Fox Lane, Bowie, Maryland, USA, 20720. I am speaking as the authorized agent of the estate of Mrs. Boynton and the owner of the benefiting property. Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council, and Mr. Egger. Just quickly, when you see the diagram, you can see that it bulges out. This is a property of the estate of Mrs. Boynton, who passed away last year. When this would potentially be sold to a new owner, what we wanted to do was ensure that no one would build anything in that lump, so that by having it as part of our property, we can isolate it from any other structure. We have no plans on building anything there. We just want it as a buffer so that we don't have any neighbors further to the south of us on that severed part. The lane will also be included, and so that will then take any concerns about future ownership of the retained property having any issues with the lane that goes through their property, which is as it is now. So I am certainly able to answer any questions, but it just seems to make sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Anybody else from members of the public like to speak to this application? Okay, I don't see any. Council, are there any questions for Manager Egger or the applicant's agent? Okay, I don't see any. Mr. Egger, as a result of these proceedings, are there any recommendations you'd like to make to council?
Your worship, as detailed in the staff report, staff would recommend the application be approved.
Okay, the bylaw will be considered by council later this afternoon. If there are no further questions, then I declare this public meeting to be concluded. That brings us to the end of the public hearings, and just for procedural, the bylaws will be discussed after our deputations. We do have 5 deputations today, which will come up next, but I am going to grant what time is it now? 4:05. A 5-minute recess. We'll be real quick, just to, we've been at it since 2:30, so, and then we'll get right to the deputation. So just want to thank the public for your patience, but we'll be back in 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, wanted to get started, please? Okay, so, council, we have completed our public meetings. We will now roll into deputations, which I do have here on my agenda. And I welcome Morgan Jones from MP Planning to the podium, please. Thank you. I'll remind you that you do have 10 minutes for your presentation, okay?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Members of council, staff, the public. It's nice to be here today. My name is Morgan Jones. I'm a planner with MP Planning. We're a professional land use consultancy at 44 King William Street, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H1G3. MP Planning is the authorized agent for Tyler Birch, who is the owner of 1064 Xavier Street. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak here today in objection to the approval of this application. In addition to the presentation that I'm going to make today, just want to make note that a written submission was submitted to the town on January 31st by myself. It is noted in the town staff report. Hopefully members of council have had an opportunity to review that submission. This first slide is an overview of the property. I think we all know where this is. This is in Kilworthy, just south of Gravenhurst, just off Highway 11. The aerial map shows what the existing area looks like. The subject property is highlighted in red. The rest of the area there you can see are residential properties, and we also have an existing quarry just north of the site. The other exhibit you see there today, it's a zoning map, and that shows that the bulk of the subject area is zoned residential, with the exception of the quarry to the north. And we do have a small, we have a fire hall, I believe, that's also in the area as well. But other than those two uses, the majority of the uses in the area are residential, single detached. This slide was on a snowy January day, and it's just a photo of some of the residences that are in the area. They're acre lots, large frontage, well vegetated, minus the areas that are cleared for the house and the driveway. Generous setbacks between the properties, and again, the use of the area is essentially single detached dwellings. From an official plan perspective, the subject lands and the whole area is designated rural settlement area. And although that does allow a employment or business type use within it, Kilworthy's a large community. And when we go from official plan, we work our way down to other land use controls like zoning. And the area that is subject to this application, including the property, is all residentially zoned. The proposed use as a contractor's yard is, in my opinion, better suited on a higher order road that's more well-traveled. That's typically better for business. It would have less impact on existing residences in the community, and would be off of larger roads, which typically are better suited to take larger vehicles and heavy amounts of traffic. The proposed employment use isn't consistent with the character of the neighborhood or the surrounding land uses. And in my opinion, the proposal does not meet the general intent of the official plan. In addition to this slide, my submission did note that there are a variety of policies that the official plan has that really deal with the core of the issue here, which is compatibility. So there are a number of policies in the official plan which speak to compatibility. And if compatibility is in question, the type of reports or studies that should be done to inform a decision of staff or council. It also goes on to speak to the type of material that would be submitted with a rezoning application, And there are other items that were not in the submission, typically something like a planning justification report, traffic study if necessary, land use compatibility study in this case. So those were just a few key reports that I thought were missing from this submission. From a zoning perspective, we've touched on it. It's residentially zoned, residential uses in the area. From a zoning perspective, 3 of the 4 permitted uses are residential, providing short-term and long-term accommodation. Small-scale employment uses were not considered to be appropriate by council when the bylaw was implemented. I think was a prudent decision. I think the areas and to prevent land use conflicts, zoning should differentiate where different uses are permitted. And a use of this nature is again better suited in a non-residential area, in my opinion. If the rezoning is approved, feel it would only serve to entrench the use. I understand, you know, the use ended up at the property one way or another, and we just think it's better that council not look to approve this zoning. It would probably send the wrong message to this owner and perhaps other business owners that if you mistakenly locate in a residential area, it could be okay if you just come forward with a temporary use or zoning application to be approved. So we just think it's better that this business be located in another area and that this bylaw not be approved. And I think we want to note that it's nothing to do against the business or the business owner. This is a use that's needed in Gravenhurst. It's needed in Muskoka. There's probably many members of the public here that have used the services like this before. It's just this particular location just isn't, in my opinion, appropriate location for this business. It's going to have too many adverse impacts on the area residents. Town staff report was received. It recommends the council does not approve the application. Staff's opinion is that the scale of the contractor's yard is a concern, that the application is not consistent with the PPS, provincial planning statement, does not conform to the official plan, and is not appropriate and does not represent good planning in this location, which is something I just touched on. It's not that this business isn't something that's needed, it's just that this location isn't really appropriate. And I agree with the staff recommendation, and I would implore council today to bring forward a motion to deny the application. In conclusion, the application fails to conform to the official plan, in my opinion. It does not meet the general intent of the zoning bylaw. It's certainly not in character with the neighborhood. I don't think it's going to be compatible with the residential neighborhood, and there's going to be some adverse impacts. Local residents have submitted letters of concern and been fully engaged in this process. A lot of them are here today to speak and just see how things go. Again, I'll reiterate, town staff are recommending denial of the application, which I believe is the right recommendation, and it doesn't represent good planning. And with that, I'll welcome any questions or comments from committee, council, staff, or the public. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation, Mr. Jones. I just did want to clarify just one point procedurally. We wouldn't be putting a motion to deny forward. That's not how it works. We just wouldn't be approving it. Just so the public's clear. So how it works is nobody puts forward a motion to deny. We just don't approve. So it's one way or the other. Yes.
Through you,
keep it in the negative, yes.
Yeah, sorry, through you, Chair. That's perfectly acceptable, depending on what your decision is. I've seen it go both ways
okay.
before. I've seen a new motion come forward, but I do understand that from a Planning Act perspective, the denial in the affirmative is interpreted to be a denial
Okay,
of
yeah,
the
no, I
application.
just
So,
wanted to,
thank you.
I just
Yep.
wanted to clarify that, and I also wanted to clarify, we do have a report coming forward, which we will be approving, only because we will be receiving it, but the decision is actually made at bylaw stage. I realize I'm clouding the situation here, but I just want everybody to be perfectly clear of how things work. So with that, I'll ask for the next deputation to come. Thank you. We appreciate your patience in joining us today. I will ask for... Oh, his name is on there, makes that easier. Mr. Weatherall, welcome, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. Apologize in advance, I'm a little nervous, but I don't get to speak in public very often. My wife and I live at 1055 Xavier. It's a great neighborhood, and this is our dream retirement home. We are really happy with the town. We've been living here 7 years full-time now, and love the people. And I'm a very happy volunteer with GAP. GAP is all about neighbors helping neighbors. Unfortunately, this application is not neighbors helping neighbors. This is one individual decided to run a business like this in our residential neighborhood. It is not compatible. When they were found by the town, told by the town that they're in violation of the existing bylaws, they decided they needed an exception. When they learned of significant opposition by the neighborhood, including all of these folks here today, and learning of the detrimental impacts it's having on our neighborhood, they still continued to pursue their application. One might say, that's not very nice. But this isn't about whether the person is nice or not. It's about whether the business belongs in our neighborhood, and it does not. And I can assure you, a majority of our neighbors feel the same as me. It does not belong. I'd like to give you just 3 little stories to kind of color it just a little bit for you. A couple behind us that's, believe it or not, a little older than us, they bought their dream house. They have remarked a couple times in the past years, they wish they hadn't bought the house. The trucks with the noise and the dirt is impacting them significantly. A neighbor across the street, I would not have bought this house if I'd known this business was going to be there. My wife and I agree. My wife has asked me twice in the last 6 months, should we be moving? Why should we have to move? Because one individual wants to run an illegal business in our neighborhood. We shouldn't have to. What really irks my wife, though, is, besides me, is they want to rely upon their illegal use as a springboard to say, you should therefore allow me to extend my stay. It's kind of like if a thief breaks into your house and they say, well, now that I'm in here, you should give me a reward. Well, do you say, you're right? Or do you say, no, get out of here? That's what we'd like you to do in this application. Deny, I think you said, deny the application, enforce our bylaw, protect our kids, our families, and our neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Council, are there any questions I should have asked when the planner was up there as well? Are there any questions? Okay, so we'll go on to the next deputant, Tyler Birch, I believe. Sorry, I think I only have Tyler's. What's your name? Danielle. Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. I just I didn't have you on my list.
No
so.
problem. I'm just doing
Okay.
the speech.
Yeah.
It's emotional
perfect.
support, really.
Okay, so Tyler, I'll remind you, you do have 10 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council, for the opportunity to speak here today. I want to start by saying my deputation is a little different. It's about business fairness, and I think not just about our neighborhood, as we are business owners, Danielle and I. So thanks for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Tyler Birch, and I'm alongside my wife, Danielle Martin, to express our strong opposition to the proposed zoning amendment at 1076 Xavier Street. Oh, you needed my address, didn't you? 1064. Okay. We are proud residents and committed business owners in Gravenhurst. And over the years, we've invested deeply in this town, not just emotionally, but economically.
Together, we own and operate 6 companies, with the majority of the operations based here in Gravenhurst. Through these businesses, we employ local residents, contributing over $2 million annually in payroll to the local economy. We also pay approximately $10,000 a year in commercial property taxes for our building, where our staff work out of. We don't share this to boast, but to make clear that we believe in doing things the right way, by following bylaws, respecting zoning amendments, and giving back to the community that has been so good to support us. That's why we're disheartened and a little, frankly, frustrated that we're even having a discussion at this point. The issue of business fairness. The Rumbles are requesting permission to operate a contractor's yard with heavy equipment in our residential property. Meanwhile, business owners like us and others invest in commercial space, play by the rules, and contribute meaningfully to the local tax base. When Danielle and I first started our business, we had limited resources financially. We worked from a rented commercial basement space for $500 a month. At no point did we consider running our business from our home and violating any bylaws or impacting our neighbors. We followed the rules because we believe that's what part of being a community is all about. So it is incredibly frustrating for us to see a situation that, you know, there's no special recognition or anything for people who do things the right way, but if you start your business and run it illegally out of a residential property, then you can ask for forgiveness later. It undermines the entire premise of fairness and good governance. To add to this, my understanding is that the 2 new owners, David and Daniel, and this isn't confirmed, aren't even residents of Gravenhurst. They live outside this community, but are seeking exceptions that would negatively impact the people who live in it every day. Long-term consequences and future impact. This decision is not just about one property. It's about broader implications. If this property is rezoned, what happens if Todd sells it? The zoning change won't disappear when the business does. Future owners could introduce even more disruptive uses, and council will have little recourse once that door has been opened. Let's also not forget that this property has already been used improperly for nearly a decade. Todd Rumble openly admitted during your council meeting that he had been running and operating his business from that location, it's a different property but in the same neighborhood, for over 9 years, leveraging town services while only paying residential property tax. I think that's important to know. Meanwhile, those of us who play by the rules have to pay our fair share. To make matters even clearer, both our professional planner and the town's own planning department have recommended against this temporary rezoning. That alignment should speak volumes. When both the applicant's neighbors and the professional advisors who understand the official plan say it is not appropriate, it is difficult to understand why we are still debating it. If this rezoning is approved, it could easily invite more businesses to request similar treatment within our communities. Others might look at this and assume it's acceptable to bypass bylaws and request approval later. That undermines the integrity of the town's planning process and sends the wrong message to our current entrepreneurs and business owners. A call to uphold community standards. This is not personal. I think the applicants are good people. And I also believe and respect that anyone trying to run a business and make a living is doing the right thing. But there's a right way to do it, and rezoning residential properties for heavy equipment use is not it. Madam Mayor, members of council, thank you again for your service to this community. I know these decisions aren't easy, and I genuinely appreciate the time and effort you've dedicated to reviewing this matter. I really have. But I also urge you to consider the broader implications on fairness, on community trust, and on the kind of town we are building together. Please reject, I don't know if that's the right terminology, this rezoning request and continue to support those who have chosen to grow their businesses in line with the values and regulations that protect all residents of Gravenhurst. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Next on the list, we have Linda Rennick for the same application. So I'll remind you, you do have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor and councillors, for listening to me. Linda Rennick. I reside at 1052 Xavier Street. I moved there in 2023, and for those who know me, it was a big deal and a big move. What I was looking for was a quiet neighborhood that had nature around me. I wanted to enjoy the peacefulness, but still close to town, just 10 minutes to town. And I researched everything to death, and I thought I did this, knew everything I needed to know about the area. Driving in and out of there multiple times before I purchased, there was trucks going in and out that I had assumed were for construction, because there were still homes being built in the community, my neighbor's house being one of them. The properties are all about an acre and trees all around, so it really felt like I was in the bush. But I had what I was looking for, a nice community, year-round neighbors, streetlights, and so I thought this was the perfect spot. So once I moved in, I realized that the trucks going in and out were coming from the contractor's yard, which I guess if I had approached the town to ask that question before I bought, you probably wouldn't have known about it. I don't know for sure, but because from what I understand, it wasn't allowed from the beginning. And it's tucked in behind, so you can't see the trucks. There's a long driveway that goes in. So it was pretty upsetting, and the noise and the dust last year, like just the dust, having to clean off patio furniture. Elderly are walking on the street. It's not a big, super wide street. Kids are going to the school bus. They're riding their bikes on the streets. And I just think safety-wise, it's not a good thing as well. My ex-husband had a natural stone business. We had lots of heavy equipment, dump trucks, backhoes, excavators, big floats, and we had property in town at that time, but it never occurred to us to park the dump truck in our residential property. One thing, we didn't think it would be allowed, and we just would not do that to our neighbors. They're noisy, they're dirty, and so we rented property. We rented 2 pieces of property, one that we stored all the heavy equipment on, and another property where we stored all the natural stone and aggregate, and we respected our neighbors. And as Tyler said, it has nothing to do with the rumbles. It's a residential area. It's not the spot where it should be. And it was talked about having the trucks go in on Picard Lane, taking them off Xavier, but it's still, that's a road that we all use when we're coming south from town. We take the exit onto Picard, and it's a narrow road to meet trucks in there coming in and out. Our mailboxes are right on the corner of North Xavier and Picard, so there's cars parking there all the time to get their mail. It's just, I just don't think it would be a good situation. So I'm hoping that council will turn down the application, and I can have my quiet neighborhood back and what I was hoping for, because honestly, I don't think I would have moved there. Well, I wouldn't have moved there if I had known, and I really don't want to move again. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. I have one more person on my list. Carmen? Oh,
I'm here.
oh, Carmela,
Can you hear
pardon
me?
me.
Yes,
Carmela, welcome.
thank you.
Great, you have 10 minutes.
Okay. I live at 1104 Xavier Street in Kilworthy, POE 1GO. Madam Mayor and members of Gravenhurst Municipal Council, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Carmela Leviti, and I am a resident and homeowner at 1104 Xavier Street. I'm here to express my strong Opposition to the proposed zoning amendment that would allow commercial excavation trucks to use our residential street, Xavier Street North, and Picard Lane as part of their operation. The issue goes beyond inconvenience. It's about protecting the safety, integrity, and the quality of life in our neighborhood. I represent not only my household, but also the many families who live on these streets and share their concerns. First of all, safety hazards. The presence of large excavation trucks and flatbed hauling heavy equipment poses significant dangers to residents, particularly children. Our streets were not designed for such industrial traffic. Blind corners on Xavier Street have multiple blind corners that make it difficult for drivers to see oncoming vehicles or pedestrians. When these large trucks navigate turns, they sometimes occupy up to 4 lanes, blocking visibility entirely. No sidewalks. There are no sidewalks on Xavier Street North, or Picard. Children walking or playing near the roads are especially vulnerable. Daily frequency. These trucks are traveling through our neighborhoods multiple times a day, far exceeding the initial agreement of twice daily, and creating an ongoing safety risk for pedestrians and drivers alike. This is an accident waiting to happen, and we cannot afford to ignore the dangers these trucks poses. When the business was initially granted permission for the easement at the back of their property, they assured residents that truck traffic would be minimal, just 2 trips per day. However, this promise has been broken. Trucks now make multiple trips throughout the day and night, disturbing our lives with constant noise, vibration, and dust. The company's failure to honor its commitment demonstrates a lack of respect for our community and raises serious concerns about their accountability moving forward. If this zoning amendment is approved, there is no guarantee that future promises will be kept. We cannot trust the business to prioritize the well-being of residents when there's actions have already shown otherwise. Our neighborhood is being transformed into an industrial throughway, and it's taking a toll on all of us. Noise pollution, the constant rumbling of heavy trucks disrupt the peace we once enjoyed in our homes. Road damage. Xavier Street was recently resurfaced with chip and tar pavement, yet it already shows signs of wear and tear to the strain from these heavy trucks. Dust and vibration. The dust kicks up the truck's traffic, affects air quality, while vibrations from these vehicles damage nearby properties. These disruptions are eroding the character of our neighborhood and diminishing its livability. Local zoning regulations exist to protect residential areas from inappropriate land use, and this situation is a clear violation, in my opinion, of those principles. Residential streets should not serve as access routes for commercial operations involving heavy machinery. The amendment sets a dangerous precedent for future zoning decisions that could further encroach on residential neighborhoods. The council has a duty to uphold zoning bylaws that prioritize community safety, coherence, and transparency. The increased truck traffic raises serious environmental green space loss. The presence of commercial operations in our neighborhood reduce accessible open areas where children can play safely. Climate impact. Heavy trucks contribute to increased emissions in our area, undermining efforts towards environmental sustainability. Health issue. Dust pollutions from truck actively negatively affect air quality, which can lead to respiratory issues for residents, especially children and elderly individuals. Approving this amendment would be a step backwards in terms of our environmental responsibility. As a resident who has lived on Xavier Street, I can personally attest to these disruptions having affected my family's daily life. My grandchildren cannot safely play outside because of the constant truck traffic. We are forced to endure noises at all hours, making it difficult to relax even in our own homes. The sense of community we once had is being replaced by frustration and concern over what may happen next if this amendment is approved. This isn't just about me. It's about every family living on Xavier Street North, and Picard. We deserve better than this. Madam Mayor and members of council, I urge you to take a decisive action by denying, not approving this zoning amendment. Here's why. Protect the safety of my grandchildren, my children, and pedestrians and drivers in our neighborhood. Hold businesses accountable for honoring their commitment. preserve the integrity and livability of our residential area, prevent further environmental harm caused by industrial traffic in residential zones. The company should be required to relocate its operation to a more appropriate commercial area, one that does not negatively impact families or compromise public safety. In closing, I ask you to consider the long-term consequences this amendment would have on our community. Approving it would sacrifice the safety, peace, and quality of life we all deserve in favor of commercial interests that have already proven themselves unreliable. As elected official, your responsibility is to protect your constituent, the families who call Gravenhurst home, not businesses seeking convenience at our expense. I trust you will make the right decision by rejecting this amendment and safeguarding the well-being of our community. Thank you for your time and consideration. Thank you very much. Carmela.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Okay, so that brings us to a close of our deputations. So, Council, I'll ask, are there any questions to any of the people who have had deputations today? Or any questions to our planner, who's going to actually give us an update on new business as soon as I stop talking. So I'll leave that to you then, Mr. Agar, we'll start on new business. And do I have something to read? So be it resolved that report number DEV 2025-19, REZA 51-2023, Rumble Xavier Street be received for information. Moved by Councillor Morphy, second by Councillor Robinson. And just so the public understand, the reason this is different than the first four applications is they had their public hearing in October. So this is being brought back sort of as a refresher to council. So when we receive and approve this report, it doesn't mean that we're approving the bylaw. That comes after. So stay tuned, I just like everybody to understand how the process is working. So, Mr. Agar.
Thank you, Your Worship. And for council's benefit, I'll go through the same sort of presentation that I did for the other applications. So the subject property, as you're aware, is located on Xavier Street. The property is designated rural settlement area in the official plan and is zoned residential community RC4, subject to special provision 1210 in the town zoning bylaw and as discussed in the staff report. There's currently a dwelling and a large garage on the property, which are well screened from the road by mature hardwoods and coniferous trees. The land is flat and level except for a pond on the west side of the property, which is remnant from a former pit. Beyond the existing garage at the rear of the property is a level and cleared area where vehicles are parking and material and equipment are stored. There are also 2 shipping containers and a fuel tank. As council's aware, the application was submitted in order to permit a contractor's yard on the property for a temporary period of 3 years. The statutory public meeting, as we heard earlier, was held last year, specifically on November 26, 2024. At that time, in accordance with the staff recommendation, council deferred making a decision in order to allow the applicant to submit a site plan drawing to clarify the details of the contractor's establishment, including material storage areas, vehicle parking, as well as details about the development of the Picard Lane road allowance. So a sketch was provided on February 24th, 2025, which is included as attachment B to the staff report. Staff would also note that the sketch is not considered to be a satisfactory site plan drawing, which is required to be of common metric scale, showing boundaries, dimensions of the property, showing the location, size, and type of existing and proposed buildings, but the sketch is intended to generally show features of the contractor's yard. And so there are 3 sketches now that I'll show. So this is the most recent one that was provided since that meeting. So again, we're utilizing aerial photography there, and then they've done some color coding to provide some information about where aggregate storage and materials were, as well as some additional labeling. So that was the updated plan that staff did receive pending that November meeting of last year. In addition to that, as previously discussed, although there is no definition of a contractor's yard in the zoning bylaw, there is a definition of contractor's establishment, which shall mean the yard of a contractor or construction company, which is used for the depot, as a depot for the storage of maintenance of equipment used by the contractor or company, and includes facilities for the administration or management of the business and the stockpiling or storage of supplies used in the business, but does not include the wholesale or retail sale of building supplies or home improvement supplies. As evidenced by the public comments received, a contractor's yard or a contractor's establishment has the potential to have very few impacts, or it also has the potential to have very significant impacts depending on the scale and the type of the operation, such as a home building contractor versus an excavation contractor. There's different types of contractors' yards, and depending on the business and nature that they're in, the scale of the operation really is the critical component here of what's appropriate and where it's appropriate. While there are a number of commercial vehicles on the site, while the number of commercial vehicles on the site can be limited through an amending zoning bylaw, this would be very difficult to enforce if the use is permitted. It's also worth mentioning several contractors' yards or establishments have been considered through zoning bylaw amendment process in the last few years. There have been varying degrees of public concern depending on the location of the proposed use. Contractors' yards are typically located in more rural, non-residential areas where the potential impacts can be better mitigated. And depending on the scale of a contractor's yard, would generally be considered either a commercial use or an industrial use, and the official plan policies primarily speak to scale in order to determine appropriate uses within the rural settlement area. In this case, based on the information available in the public comment received, the large equipment and storage uses result in an intensity that goes what's beyond the scope of a commercial use envisioned for a residential subdivision in the rural settlement area. It's also important to note that the Whispering Pine subdivisions is still being developed, and there will be construction vehicles using Xavier Street and Picard Lane until all of the lots are built out. As such, vehicles from the applicant's company may be using the roads regardless. At the October 15th Committee of the Whole meeting, Council will recall a resolution was passed by Council to permit the applicant in order to enter into an easement agreement to allow temporary use over an unopened portion of the Picard Lane road allowance. As it's understood that Xavier Street is still currently under its warranty period. As detailed in the staff report and in consultation with the infrastructure department, should the proposed temporary use be denied or not approved, it is assumed that the easement agreement will no longer be required, and Council may wish to consider rescinding that resolution permitting the agreement. I'll actually go through comments before getting into site photos, just to refresh everyone's memory. So the chief building official provided the comment that septic tank and septic fields should be shown on a site plan drawing. Heavy equipment and materials should not be stored in that area. The Director of Infrastructure provided the comment that Infrastructure Services was not initially in support of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, as it would increase the frequency of heavy traffic within the subdivision. Council has since approved that resolution that was previously mentioned. Should the application be denied, it should be rescinded. However, if it is not, the Infrastructure Department does require the confirmation of an Ontario land surveyor, site environmental species at risk to be completed, the submission of a detailed road design by a professional engineer, and the preparation of a reinstatement and revegetation plan once the easement agreement expires. Fire and emergency services, no objection, subject to Ontario with building code and fire code compliance. The manager of revenue, no objection, and the District of Muskoka, no objection as well. As we heard earlier today, and as detailed in the staff report, Morgan Jones, a registered professional planner from MP Planning Inc., provided a submission outlining the professional opinion that the proposal does not conform to the official plan, and that the submission does not include the required technical reports to consider such a request. In addition to that, 16 letters of opposition have been received from residents of the Whispering Pine subdivision, all of which were provided to Council. And as council's aware and has read all those, I won't get into the details of those concerns, as we heard some of them as well today through the deputations. In addition to that, 8 letters of support have also been received from property owners within the Whispering Pine subdivision, which were also provided to council. And a number of people did also speak at the public meeting held in November in support of the application as well. And now I will move through site photos. So this is standing at the driveway to the entrance of the subject property, looking west onto Xavier Road. This is then turning east and looking east on Xavier. This is then looking directly across the street from the entrance into the subject lands. This is then the entrance into the subject lands and the driveway leading to it. Again, as previously noted, it is well screened and set back from the property. This is then the dwelling on the subject property, and the garage would be off to the right-hand side, as you can see here. This is then a close-up of the existing garage. And on the other side of it, you could see the previously mentioned fuel tank. This is then turning back towards the house, and the pond area from the former pit would be on the right-hand side and the dwellings on the left-hand side. And you can also see at the time of this site visit, which would predates the snow, you'll also see the stockpiling of materials. This is more photos of other materials associated with the additional use, and you'll also see the shipping container in the rear of the photo. This is then the beginning of the driveway to the road allowance. And then from that road allowance down to Picard Lane. This is then standing on the road allowance, and you can just barely make out the properties at the rear on Xavier through the tree cover. And then this is looking east on Picard Lane towards Highway 11. And last, this is looking back west from Picard Lane. Well, as detailed in the staff report, it's staff's opinion that due to the scale of the contractor's yard, the application is not consistent with the provincial planning statement, does not conform to the official plan, is not appropriate, and does not represent good planning in this location. As a result, staff would recommend that council not approve the application, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that they may have.
Okay, so, council, are there any questions for Mr. Egger? Okay, pretty self-explanatory. So we will now be receiving that report. So I will call a question on receiving the report. So all in favor? So we did agree to receive the report. So now we're going to go into bylaws. No. Oh, we have one new business, pardon me. We're going to get to bylaws as soon as we get through this new business. Oh, I do have something to read. It's moved by Councillor Strength, who's still with us online, seconded by Councillor Varney. Be it resolved that report number DV 2025-20, Shore Road Closure 01-2025, Rogers, Sparrow Lake, be received for information. And finally, that council hereby declare the following lands as surplus, part of the original Shore Road Allowance, OSRA, in front of Part Lot 27, Concession 6, in the former Township of Morrison, now in the town of Gravenhurst, District Municipality of Muskoka, municipally known as 1023-2 Waianaco Road South, Sparrow Lake. Okay, any questions or comments on that? No? Okay, I'll call the question. Please vote. And that carries. Thank you. Okay, so council, it is moved by Councillor Cairns. I'm gonna read these once through, and it's moved by and then if there's something that you want to pull to discuss deny, defer. You're going to pull it after I read them. So it's moved by Councillor Karen, second by Councillor Hunter. Be it resolved, the following bylaws be read, passed, and engrossed into the bylaw book. Bylaw number 2025-18, zoning Rumble, Xavier Street. Bylaw number 2025-19, zoning Green and Johns, Lake Muskoka. Bylaw number 2025, zoning Williamson, Kilworthy Road. Bylaw number 2025, zoning Sparrow Lake Estates Limited, Sparrow Lake. Bylaw number 2025-22, zoning Boyington, Barkway Road. Bylaw number 2025-23, execute lease agreement with Dennis Tebow, 485 Brock Street. Bylaw number 2025-24, execute lease agreement with Burger Boys, 405 Brock Street. So, council, anybody want to pull anything for discussion? Okay, so Councillor Morphy?
Thank you, Your Worship. The second one, I've lost the list. Green and, thank you, Green and Johns.
Okay, Lake Muskoka? Councillor Johnston?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to have bylaw number 2025-18 pulled, please.
So Rumble? Yes. Okay. Yeah, anybody else have any? Okay, so we're going to vote on the remainders, and then we'll be discussing the two that have been pulled for discussion. So Williamson, Sparrow Lake, Boyington, and the two lease agreements. So we're going to vote on those. Okay, please vote. And those carry. Thank you. And I realize we pulled Lake Muskoka first, but we have people here. So we're going to go to Rumble first. The suspense is killing us, I'm sure. So we're going to go to Rumble. Councillor Johnston, you wanted to start the conversation off?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you. I'll be brief. First thing I want to say is I want to commend the neighbors that came out today and in previous occasions. You are an example today of what members in a community who have an issue with a decision that must be made by council, how to conduct yourself. Everyone was articulate. You were very calm. No one was raising any negative character inferences about the applicant. So I commend you for that very much. You're to be congratulated. The second thing I want to say is that much was said about that, and again, I commend you for this. Much was said that no one has any personal animosity for Mr. Rumble. This is not a personal issue. This is, for me, this is a criticism of a government issue, a municipal issue. And this is not, for example, as many of us around this table are very familiar with, this is not an example of a pre-existing illegal use. This was something that was started after the zoning was put on that property, and it was done illegally. Struggling to find the right word there. I know we were talking about the various verbs about delay, kill, deny. It was an illegal operation that was set up after the zoning was met. To me, the decision is very simple. As someone or a couple of people said, again very articulately, you can't operate on the basis that you know something is illegal. You do it anyway, and then say, I'm sorry. I've run into this hundreds of times in my government career. That's not the way things are to be done. And if we were to approve this, either as the staff report said, that if the bylaw is denied, that perhaps there might be consideration of a shorter temporary permission to stay. I'm not in favor of that at all. What's a bad idea is a bad idea. And the message that would be sent to other good people who might decide that they need to operate a business that might not get approved initially, this is a very bad message. It's a bad message for that, the precedent that's being set, and also, it's also a bad message to, again, go back to the neighbors that are here today. If council were to hear your presentations, and they were all very good, and decide that this bad idea is okay, it would dissuade good people in this community for the next 2 years who want to come to council and make a presentation about an issue, knowing that council will give it good, considerable, deliberate thought, as everyone around this table has done in the last 2 years, as far as I'm concerned. So as I said, it's not a difficult decision for me at all. I'm going to vote to deny this application. And I also go to Madam Manager Ager's comment. I'm prepared to, if this is the appropriate time, to, at a different point in the meeting here, sponsor or move a resolution to cancel the easement agreement. That's all I have to say, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay, so the rescinding is, I mean, you certainly can bring a motion to bring forward another time, but that's not on the table today, and we haven't given public notice for that, so we're not going to do that today. Councillor Robinson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is, if this is denied, how long would they have to get their equipment and stuff out of the neighborhood?
Mr. Ager?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Robinson. So with all applications under the Planning Act, regardless of what the decisions made today around the council table, there's a 20-day appeal period to the Ontario Land Tribunal. So after the 20-day appeal period is up, we'll work on, with your question, the denial. So if it's not permitted to be there anymore, 20 days has now come and gone. On day 21, we'd be working with our bylaw department to issue them a letter saying, you know, the appeal period's over, you're still not in compliance with the zoning bylaw, and they'd be working with our bylaw department to come up with a date on when that equipment has to be removed by. So at minimum, that 20-day period has to end before they get the letter and engage from our bylaw department, and then after that, they'd be working hand in hand with them to come up with a date that works for both parties, understanding that, you know, it can't get pushed too far down the road.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, Councillor Jorgensen. Councillor Jorgensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, just following up on Mr. Ager's response there, what if there is an appeal? How might that, how might enforcement deal with that? Or what are their options if that were to happen?
I think.
I'm looking at the director, but perhaps Mr. Ager can answer.
Yeah, Manager Ager. I mean, yeah, Manager Ager.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Jorgensen. If there is an appeal, then in theory, for lack of a better expression, it's kind of in purgatory. There hasn't been an actual final decision on the matter, and from our understanding and working with our bylaw department, if they try to do any enforcement, right now, the courts that they'd be dealing with to bring them into compliance would suggest that the applicant's currently going through the appropriate channel to get a final decision on the matter. So until a decision would then be rendered by the OLT, it would be, you know, status quo.
Okay, so council, I don't see any other questions on this, or not, we're beyond questions, sorry, this is time for debate. I don't see any other, anybody who wanted to speak to it. Councillor Morphy, you have a question? Or go ahead.
I'm on. Sorry, just clarification. Even though you're recommending deny, we vote yes if we want the business to keep going, and we vote no if we want it to stop, right?
We always vote in the affirmative, so it's either yay, like yay or nay. So I'm gonna call the question. It's either, Do you want to, the question is always, do you want to approve the application? So you vote to approve. So if you don't want to approve, yes, you vote no, but it's always in the affirmative. Okay, well, well, I'm going to call the question, so pick the right button that you want to vote. So, council, I'll call the question unless there's any other procedural questions. Okay, so. So the bylaw, the zoning amendment is denied. Okay, so moving right along. Councillor Morphy, you had something else you wanted to talk about on Lake Muskoka?
Yes, thank you. I want to just have the conversation. Because in this application, all the square meters they were giving for a sleeping cabin, et cetera, was all based on the bylaw that says you have to have 90 meters or 300 feet. And there's a different impact of a boathouse with living quarters on a 100-foot lot than it is on a 300-foot lot. So I just wanted, I made a couple notes. I think they're blessed to have what they have. I really do. Anybody on a 100-foot lot, I don't say this sets precedent very often, but this will. Because everybody who has a boathouse less than 300 meters who wants living quarters, and right now they have marine storage, I might come scrambling for it. I really struggle because they're doing the best they can to keep it as visually unimpactful on the lake. I appreciate that in the design and the architecture. But we have rules. They're allowed to rebuild what they're not allowed to have, and they want more. So I just wanted to bring it forward. As I said, I am struggling with this one because I think they should keep it as it is because they bought it, well, they probably owned it from the 50s. And they know what they have as a blessing. And I would just, yeah, I won't be voting in favor of it. I don't expect that's the way it's going to go. But I just wanted to let everyone know what's going on at the lakes and what's being talked about.
Okay, so Mr. Egger, you wanted to correct something? I mean.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, not so much a correction, more just add a bit of maybe some clarity to that when it gets into the square meters, and I can appreciate that it's a bit confusing. So, to the Councillor Morphy's comment about, they have what they have and they're expanding to the standard of a 90-meter frontage. A 90-meter frontage for a two-story boathouse would be permitted the sleeping cabin size of 46.5 square meters. Currently, right now, the second story is 24 square meters, so considerably less than 46.5 square meters. And with their expansion, they're going up to 35.3 square meters. So they're not moving up to the sleeping cabin standard size that you would see on a 90-meter frontage lot. It is, as detailed in the staff report, a relatively nominal increase, and they're not going to the standard that you would see on the size of a lot with a frontage that has 90 meters. I just wanted to make that clear.
Okay, Councillor Varney.
Through you, thank you. I thought that one of the reasons they were wanting it larger was because of the size of their boat, that they needed to get through the door of the boathouse, so that was one of the other reasons. Why? Am I wrong about that? Sorry.
Okay, so, we're at the debate stage. I'm going to allow Mr. Egger to answer the question, but this is time for us to talk amongst ourselves. Questions, because we don't want to drag the manager of planning into the debate stage. So, we'll answer the question, but I think that it's, and I'm not trying to shut you down, it's just like, I don't like him going back and forth with councillors at this stage of the meeting. So, Manager Egger?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Varney. That's correct. That given the date of when this two-story boathouse was originally constructed, which was in compliance at the time. It wasn't built to the standard today of modern boats. Actually, and fortunately enough, we did receive written comment from the neighboring property owner now, which will be circulated to council. And one of their bullet points actually says, we noted that the increase in the slip width is needed for modern boats. Our property has the same issue, and we understand that we don't have an objection to the expansion of the slip and the resulting changes to the size of building in general. So they understand that the building has to get wider to accommodate modern boats, and you're correct, that's why it does have to get wider.
Okay, I will ask, was there anything else that wasn't covered in the neighbors' comments? Because I did tell him we would circle back to that, so.
Thank you, Your Worship. Generally speaking, the comments were overly positive about the process, as we kind of were able to hear Mr. Yost provide. Their primary concern related to the corner at the water level of where the dock is being expanded. However, they understand that they do have rights to expand there because they're not making the situation worse or getting any closer to that lot line. And then the conversation goes into understanding that as of right now, a boat is parked there because a boat can't fit in the boathouse. But once a boat can fit there, perhaps that alleviates some of the congestion concerns. And they understand that once the property owners move there full time and no longer rent the property out, they'll understand that there's going to be more of a mutual understanding and respect for how boat traffic is used. So that's the general synopsis of what the letter says, and that they continue to have a good working relationship with the applicants.
That's good news. Okay. Councillor Jorgensen?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to comment, and I am in favor of this particular application. And I think what we do at Planning Council and Committee of Adjustment is look at the impact of these changes and try and look at them from the standpoint of what is the actual impact by moving forward with this. And in this particular case, I don't see a huge impact. It's certainly not a change in the water quality. It's not a change in the use of the building. It's really, I think we heard from Mr. Egger that this is really not a more intensive use, and the guarantee that there be no washroom facilities in this building would work towards that as well. So I see this as, in fact, it's probably a betterment because we are reducing a little bit that development in the first 20 meters. But overall, people want to invest in their neighborhood. They want to invest in their buildings. It's going to be a nicer looking building, I think, as well. And I think that's a factor that in terms of the visual environment, I look at it, and I'm not concerned about the extra meter in the height because, again, a peaked roof is, I feel, more visually appealing in general, in keeping with what's around the lake, but also it's more sustainable because, again, we have just been through huge snow loads and all that, and the fact is a peaked roof handles those better. So that's why I just wanted to comment on why I would approve this application.
Okay, I do have Councillor Strength, who's still with us on the line, has asked to speak, so welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. All the way from the Bahamas, I wanted to chime in. I didn't want anybody to think that I was faking, but I just wanted to point out that Director Halford is always telling us, as well as Manager Egger, the view from the canoe. The view from the canoe is going to be improved. I support this application, and I think that it's only improving the quality of what we see on the lakes.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Anybody? Oh, Councillor Murphy had her light on, but it's off. Oh, now it's back on again. Okay, Councillor Murphy.
I understand where this is going, and I don't disagree with the boat. I don't disagree with the visual. They've tried everything in the right way. I know it's been a rental. I know a sleeping cabin. It's going to stay 2 bedrooms, but it's going to be a lot bigger 2 bedrooms, and which means more people, more heads in beds. If you have more space, you're at a lake. And I still don't understand the plumbing. At one point it says that it is there. I understand it's not being allowed if it's going to be removed. Anyway, that's it for me, guys. I get it. Thank you.
Okay. So, council, does anybody else want to address this? Councillor Hunter?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you. I am going to support this. I do agree with the comments that were made around the table, but I struggle a little bit only because I feel like we went through this on Bridens Bay Road, which is just down the way, and we went the other way. And I know that circumstances are different, but in that case, I also agreed with the view from the canoe and that I thought that it would look better. They were looking for something bigger. Again, I know circumstances are different, but I do struggle because I think I agree with it here, but I agreed with it there too. So those are just my comments, but.
Okay, no, I mean, that's the thing with planning, is every application is different. That's why we look at that's why we're here. That's why you're allowed to ask for a zoning amendment. Every application is different. We also hear a lot about precedent. Well, precedent is in law. I don't think, I mean, sure, you can say we set an example, but, you know, every single application is I've never seen one. Actually, I have seen one exactly the same, just about exactly the same, and the person who was granted it 2 months prior came and opposed the one that was being proposed 2 months later. So I just think that you have to keep in mind that everything is different. I think that this circumstance is, again, what's going to change? We just had a meeting, well, it wasn't a public hearing, where people's lives were impacted. And I understand that. People felt that would have a negative impact on their lives. I can't see how this has a negative impact on anyone's life. You know, the neighbor seems somewhat supportive. I don't know. I just think that if we're talking about doing things purposely, I think that the idea behind this is consistent with our policies and our very well educated planning staff agree. So I will be supporting the application. So with that, I will call the question. Madam Clerk, if everybody's ready. Okay, and that carries. Thank you. So it is moved by Councillor Johnston, second by Councillor Jorgensen. Be it resolved that the minutes of the council meeting dated February 25th, 2025 be approved as circulated. All in favor? Me, I hadn't. That carries, thank you. And is moved by Councillor Morphy, second by Councillor Robinson. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2025-24 to confirm the council meeting held on March 25th, 2025 be passed. All in favor? And that carries, thank you. Motion to adjourn, Councillor Hunter and Councillor Barney? Oh, Councillor, I'm going to go to Councillor Strength only because she's, Councillor Strength, I didn't see your hand go up. Perfect. Okay, well, that's a wrap. Thanks, everyone. Oh, finish voting.